Hello, friends. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the Washington State Child Support Calculator. This is a calculator that is used to determine exactly how much child support you are obligated to pay and how much child support your ex is obligated for as well. In this case, we're going to take a look at a very simple example with a father and a mother having a child who is 7 years old. Before we start filling out the numbers, if you haven't watched my other video about child support that explains why child support is necessary, why do we take the incomes of the parents, why does it matter what each parent earns, and why does it matter how old the child is, why are we entering all these numbers here? If you want to go take a look at that video first, that'll that'll clarify the concepts so that you can understand and follow along as we enter these numbers here. I've uh, I've pasted a link to that video in this video, so feel free to take a look at that. But if you understand the concepts, if you've taken a look at that video or just know what you're doing, then let's continue here. In this case, this is specific to Washington State. Different states may have a different way to calculate it. Not all of them have a web page like this, but they all have some kind of formula that can be used to compute the child support obligations. In this case, column 1 is one parent and column 2 is the other parent. And let's assume that column 1 is dad, the father, and column 2 is mom and mother. The father's age, let's say, is 37. The mother's age, let's say, is 35. These are just super random numbers. The county is Adams. Um, is just a random county. We'll just select in this case. It doesn't really matter for this example. So let's just go with the Adams County. Let's say the child's name is Boy, and he is 7 years old, and he lives primarily with the mother. So column 2 is the mother. Let's just take, for example, he lives primarily with the mother. You can add other children, but in this case, let's just go for one child. Column 1 is the father. Let's say the column 1, the father earns $5,000 gross monthly, and the mother, say she earns $4,000 gross. Interest and dividend income, say they each make about $100 interest. Business income, the father just does this full-time job. The mother maybe earns an additional $300 business income. Nobody receives any maintenance. There is no other income. There is no imputed income. Of course, feel free to enter these numbers as the case may be in your scenario. In this example, we're just assuming these numbers are zero. The total gross monthly income is computed as 5,100 for the father and 4,400 for the mother. The gray box, anything that's in gray is automatically computed for us. Now let's look at some deductions we can take. Income taxes, in this bracket, let's just assume it's, $1,000 for the father and $800 for the mother. And self-employment taxes, we're going to skip all of that. Voluntary retirement contributions, this is basically your 401k or IRA. And if you make any contributions, you're able to deduct, but there's a limit. In Washington State, the limit is $416.67 per month. So if the father pays, say, $500 a month, then it would not accept it. It'll say the maximum is $416. So let's say we say $416 for the father, and the mother also contributes maybe $400. Maintenance paid, let's assume nobody pays anybody any maintenance. We'll scroll down a little bit. Normal business expenses. Now, since the father does not have his own business, the mother, we said she has a little bit of business income there. So let's say her business expenses are $100 a month. And now what happens is it computes the total deductions from the gross income, and 1,416 for the father and 1,300 for the mother. That computes the monthly net income of the father at 3684 and the monthly net income of the mother at 3100. As in the video I talked about earlier, the combined income is used to determine standard of living. The combined income in this case is 6784 per month. Based on 6784 per month and the child's age, which is 7 years of age, Washington State in Adams County says that the estimated monthly expense on such a child at this standard of living is $1,126 a month. This $1,126 a month is computed here. And if we look at the father's net income and the mother's net income, it computes that the father's net income is 54.3% of the total, and the mother's net income is 45.7% of the total. Now, these are the income ratios, and these income ratios are very important because anytime any expenses are going to be shared, they're now going to be shared in this income ratio. Based on this income ratio now, this amount is going to be split between the parents. So 54.3% of this amount comes out to be $611, and 45.7% of this amount comes out to be $515. So therefore, the basic child support obligation, which is also known as the basic obligation, for the father is $611, and for the mother is $515 a month. This is the basic support, which means that this includes the basic living expenses, the necessary expenses that all kids of this age in this county at this standard of living are estimated to have. These do not cover special case scenarios, and we will get into the special case scenarios down here. Low income limitations. This does not apply to everybody. This may apply to some people. For example, if the combined income is less than $1,000, then you just put $50 for each parent because you have to support the child. If you don't have any income, you still have $50 as a contribution there. That's just what it says. And there are some other considerations. In our case, it doesn't apply because both parents have a reasonable sized income. So the numbers are not affected by that. Father's obligation, basic obligation is still 611, and the mother's basic obligation is 515. Now let's look at other, basically you can call them deductions or credits. The monthly health insurance premium paid for the children. Suppose the father has an insurance plan with his employer in which he can include the child, and it's quite reasonable. Suppose all he has to do is pay additional $10 a month to add the child to his insurance at work. And since he does that, the mother does not need to do that, so the mother pays zero. Uninsured medical health care expenses. Let's at this time assume there are no uninsured expenses, and the combined monthly expenses becomes $10. So basically what this says is that $10 additional per month need to be paid for insurance and other expenses. This happens to be that the father pays it, but it's a shared responsibility between the parents. Let's come down. Daycare expenses. Since in this case both parents work, it is expected that when the child gets off of school in the mid-afternoon, the boy needs to go to an aftercare facility, and that aftercare facility, say, charges $350 a month. And let's say that the mother just pays that out of her pocket every month to the school directly. So we need to take that into account because that's a shared responsibility between the parents that the mother is paying directly. So we enter that under the mother. Education expenses, let's leave them as zero because maybe the kid just goes to public school and there's additional expenses over and above the basic education expenses. And let's also assume that um, there is no other special expenses. But of course, if they apply in your case, feel free to add the special expenses here. So that computes to be total daycare special expenses, comes out to be 350 that the mother has paid or pays, and nothing that the father pays. We take the daycare expenses and the healthcare expenses, and total obligation of the parents becomes $360. This is the total obligation the both of them are supposed to share. It just happens to be that $10 the father pays directly and $350 a month the mother pays directly. And we will deal with that a little later. So this 360, because it's a shared obligation, it gets split in the ratio of the incomes. The father's ratio, if we scroll a little bit up, if you remember, the father's ratio is 54.3 and the mother's is 45.7, which means that every expense is supposed to be shared in this ratio. This expense right here is also supposed to be shared in this ratio. So 54.3% of this amount is 195, and this is the mother's obligation. So let's add 195 for the additional to the 611, right? Those are the two amounts that the father is obligated for based on the income ratio. And that sum comes out to be $806. Now, this is only what the father is obligated to pay. Now, we haven't given him credit for the $10 he already has paid. Similarly, this is the amount that the mother is obligated to pay. We haven't given her credit for the $350 that she already paid out of her pocket. Now we talk about credits. The father has paid $10 directly or pays $10 directly per month for healthcare, and the mother pays $350 per month directly to the school. What we do then is this number then gets updated. So the $806 that the father was supposed to contribute, out of that, he directly contributes 10 to the provider. Therefore, he is left with only $796 to provide. Basically, this is his net obligation. And the mother, since her obligation was $680, and out of that she pays $350 directly to the provider, her remaining obligation is $330. Now, this is called the presumptive transfer payment in Washington state. In different states, it could be called differently. But this is now the final amount after all the known expenses, known monthly expenses that the father is obligated to, and this is the amount that the mother is obligated to after they've already paid directly to the providers. So this is the amount that normally the father would just send to the mother in a check every month, or it could be wage garnishment from his employer, or it could be any other method that they decide or the court orders to send the payment over. Now, this is where pretty much the normal situation ends, right? So if the situation is normal in this case, it is quite a regular situation where there's a child and a healthy child, and there are some additional expenses like daycare or health insurance premiums. So this is a pretty normal, regular situation. So this is the amount that comes out to be the payment that the father needs to make to the mother every month. There could now be additional informational calculations, but they are not going to impact this number. So if I scroll down, right, if you keep a note of this, this is part 7. If we scroll down, all these numbers, there is no gray block. There is no gray block like that, which was the calculated block, which shows that these numbers do not impact the computation, right? These numbers do not impact the computation. The computation is here, 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 these gray blocks. Everything below does not go back and impact the computation, which means that this number is not going to change no matter what you enter here. But there's a reason why we need to enter this information. The reason is that many times there are special considerations. For example, if either parent is asking for a deviation up or down, if the father says that, hey, the child lives with me for almost 50% of the time, even though the mother might be the custodial parent, the father lives with me for almost 50% of the time. Therefore, I I spend equally on his clothes and his school supplies and his vacations and his travel and his toys. I spend almost equally as the mother. Then it doesn't make sense for the father to write another $796 in a check and send it to the mother. There has to be some adjustment there because the father spent almost equally on the child as the mother. So this doesn't make sense for the father to send her an additional $796. Those are special considerations, and there is no provision, as you can see in this form, for those special considerations up to this point. Those special considerations have to happen after this point, where what happens then is that the father's assets and the mother's assets, all of them get listed out to see exactly how rich or how wealthy a person is or how modest a person might be. Because if either parent is claiming, for example, financial hardship, then they will have to provide evidence of financial hardship. When they enter these numbers here, it will support or discredit what they're saying. You could list household debt. You could list other household income. For example, income of current spouse or domestic partner, if not the other parent of this action. This is normally not considered for regular cases, but in this case, when one parent is asking for a deviation, these kinds of extraordinary expenses or incomes become important. Income of other adults in the household, once again, not considered normally, um, but under special circumstances, it may be considered. Income of children, if considered extraordinary. So only if it is considered extraordinary would the children make an extraordinary amount of money, or if there are extraordinary circumstances in which the income of the children becomes significant. Income from child support. If either parent receives a high amount of income from child support, say from a different spouse, a different ex-spouse, then those numbers won't get fed directly into the numbers up top, but they will be considered by the judge before deciding whether a deviation makes sense in this case. Non-recurring income, these are just special case scenarios. Child support owed, other children living in each household. This becomes important if one parent has, say, if the dad has remarried and now his new wife has 3 kids from her previous marriage, or maybe they have three additional kids together, then the father has a significant number of kids living in his household as compared to the mother. And again, that becomes a consideration because that is not included in any of the fields we entered above. So that becomes a consideration if the father is asking for a deviation. Other factors for consideration, this is just an open text field. Um, so what happens now is, since we've computed all these numbers, this is simply a calculator. These numbers are then going to be printed out in PDF into a file, um, most often a PDF file that you just submit in the court records with your petition to modify child support, or if you're responding to a petition to modify child support. Each parent will enter to the best of their knowledge this information. So like one parent might know their own incomes, but might not know the exact incomes of the other parent. That's okay. So both parents get to fill it to the best of their knowledge. And then if both of them have attorneys, then they can discuss with each other and agree on which is more reasonable. Many times both sides just submit both their sides to the judge, and the judge simply looks at them and figures out if there's a middle ground, or just tries to figure out who is more accurate. Once all this information has been filled in, there is a print button here. What the print button does is puts all this into a PDF that can be submitted, and let me show you that PDF. So as you can see, this produced a very nice PDF here. Um, Parents name: Dad the father, mom the mother, and the boy is 7 years old. This is Adams County, and this is proposed by, which means that if if you are proposing this, if you fill this out, you put your name. If your ex is proposing, then he or she puts their name. And this is all the information that we had entered: 5,000, 4,000, and this is the ratio. And all this information is just automatically filled out for you in this PDF. And finally, in the end, you put your signature. The other person puts their signature. If it's the same document, if they're submitting different documents, that's fine. They each put their signature or the signature of their lawyers and submit them. So that was it for this example. If you liked it, if you found it helpful, I hope you will subscribe to my channel so that you can get notified of future videos. And I hope you will like it, because when you like it, YouTube finds out that this is a useful video, so that it can show it to other people, and that other people can benefit as well. I wish you the best. Thank you for watching.